And now we are joined by Bantamweight Brandon Lewis, who faces Mo Miller on the Dana White Contender Series Week 3. Brandon, your biggest fight of your career is coming up. Is it excitement or nerves approaching this huge fight for you?
Oh, definitely excitement. I never get nervous before a fight. I always know that I'm going to go out there, I'm going to perform well, I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to show the world what I'm made of. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to be on this platform, performing in front of Dana White, and showing the world what I'm made of.
And is this your first time fighting in Vegas? Because obviously, a very different kind of situation for you. It's also fighting at the UFC Apex, which is becoming kind of an iconic place to fight at the moment with how this pandemic's turned out. How is it like going and fighting at a place that you potentially might fight in the future as well?
No, the UFC Apex, I mean, that center is legendary. You know, there's so much history there, a lot of good fights that have happened there, a lot of great fights still happening over there, and it's very unique. I know the cage size is a little bit smaller than uh, the regular normal UFC cage size, but yeah, no, I mean, fighting in Vegas, that'll be my first time, and at the Apex, I mean, what more exciting place to fight at than the Apex, other than maybe Fight Island? I don't know. I guess that'd be a close second.
And with the smaller octagon, do you feel like that is a bigger advantage to you in terms of how you would prefer it smaller, or how would you prefer it?
I train in a pretty small gym, like physically, and more so we have a lot of small, fighters and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm used to no matter whether it's we have a lot of space, no space. I mean, I'm down for whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, me and him are stuck in the same spot, and we got to work with what we got around us, whether it be in a cage, in a ring, in a circle, in an octagon, whatever the case may be. I mean, we got to fight.
And how is the training camp going ahead of this fight? Obviously, different to typical fights. This is kind of like a title fight in a way because you've got to win to get into the UFC, even to get a chance to get into the UFC. So how's the training camp been any different to what you're used to?
Honestly, for me, I know a lot of people like to change things up, but I've been doing the same thing. Every time I go into training camps, I mean, I don't really believe in camps. Sure, weeks out, I'll bump up the intensity, but every time I step in the gym, I always work to progress as a martial artist, as an athlete. I'm always improving in my everyday life. So as long as I keep that progression, I'm good. This camp, I know my opponent, he's a wrestler, so I've just been preparing for that and preparing for where else this fight may go. I feel well-rounded in every aspect of the fight, so nothing's really changed. Just progressing every way, every step of the way.
And before we get into your upcoming fight, let's just take a look at your career. 5 wins out of 5 fights. Is this are you pleased with how your career's panned out so far? Are you more than happy with how it's panned out so far?
Career as far as the fights have gone, yes, absolutely. I mean, every fight is an experience, and especially my last fight, I got to go the whole 15 minutes, and that was just a really great experience for me. I mean, all my other fights, I've always taken away, and even if you win, lose, whatever, there's always something to take away from a fight, and that's what I make sure to do is that every time I fight, I take away at least something to work on when I get back in the gym. So, I mean, I'm glad how all my fights have panned out. I've learned from every fight. As far as my career wise goes, I mean, I would have liked to been more active since I started fighting. But life gets in the way, injuries happen, politics happen, and that's the way things go. That's out of my control. So everything that I've controlled so far in my fighting career, I'm happy with, and I'm going to continue to grow and continue to stay undefeated.
And you talk about being active. There's a 4 year span in your record which you hadn't fought, or almost 4 years. What exactly happened during that time? Could you go into a bit more depth about that and how that happened?
Yeah, so after the fight, I believe it was LFA 16 with Cameron Miller. I mean, I had a lot of personal things going on so I took about 2 months off, and then I went right back to training, started ramping things up, and was ready to fight. Just a few short months after that. Um, but I had an issue of a lot of people were turning down fights. I would sign a contract. 2 weeks out, somebody would pull out, and I just had a lot of bad luck with people not accepting fights with me, having a hard time finding fights. And I was just staying ready the entire time, because at that point in my career, I was 4-0, and at that point, you got to stay ready if any of the big shows call you up, last minute opportunities. So I was just staying ready, training hard, training intense, training camp after camp, getting ready for upcoming fights, and then I got injured. At the time, I was incorporating weightlifting into my routine, which was something new for me. I was lifting weights, and I ended up rupturing a disc in my low back. I didn't realize what it was before, because it turned into, the disc was pushing on my sciatic nerve, so I was feeling sciatica, and I wasn't familiar with any kind of nerve pain before. So I kept training on it. I was like, it's nothing. Don't be a bitch. Like, don't, just keep pushing through it. And I made it worse until one morning I woke up and I had a hard time getting out of bed. I couldn't tie my shoes, and then it got progressively worse. I just couldn't function normally. I couldn't sit down for long periods of time. It was a really rough time. So I didn't have health insurance at the time. I tried to do physical therapy, and then they were like, hey, no, you got to get scanned. You got to get checked out. By the time all that got sorted out, they scheduled me a year later for my surgery. It took about 6 months to recover from that. So the way everything panned out was unfortunate, but I mean, that's something that I had to push through, learn from, and now I know how to train a little bit smarter through that. So.
And talk about that 4-year span. As a fighter, typically you want the fight as often as possible to kind of not only for your performance-wise to be as the best as you can, but also financially, it's what you need to do. So is it worrying for you that possibly if you did get injured in the future as well, that you won't get paid? And how is it like being an MMA fighter, having that kind of burden on you where you possibly can't fight and not make money?
At the same time, when you're first, when you have under 5 fights, especially, you're not making that much money with fighting anyway. So a lot of these fighters, you have a job, and that was something while I was injured, I was able to focus more on. I was able to focus more on work. I don't fight for money. Yeah, it's nice, and it allows me to focus more on training. If I was able to be a full-time fighter and only fight for my, only fighting was paying the bills, that'd be great. That'd be best case scenario. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And you just gotta be able to manage your time and continue on fighting. Yeah, it's some little extra side cash. It's cool, but that's not what I fight for. I fight for more personal glory and just to prove to everyone that I'm going to be the best out there one day. So.
And are you looking to transition into becoming full-time? Is that something you're hoping for with getting into UFC is fighting full-time?
Oh, that is my dream. That is everything that I've dreamed of ever since I was like 6 years old. I've just always wanted to be a full-time fighter. Yeah, if I could just train, fight, obviously that comes with like social media, stuff like that. That's fine. I'll entertain everybody through fighting, through whatever the case may be. But full-time fighting, content creation, whatever. Yeah, that's my dream. That's, wake up, eat, sleep, train. That's the idea. Yeah.
And being undefeated and only having 5 fights, 5 wins, do you feel like you have the experience and you're ready for the UFC, or do you feel like preferably you would have wanted more fights, but the opportunity was kind of too good to turn down?
So I've been training ever since I've been 10 years old. I have 14 years of martial arts experience. I've been training with a lot of good guys. I feel like I'm ready. I'm ready for this opportunity. Sure, would have I liked another fight or two? Maybe, but at the same time, nothing's ever going to be perfect, and I'm ready for my opponent, and I'm ready for the level of competition, that I'm prepared to face. And at the same time, that little extra pressure makes you train harder, makes you do everything a little bit more intense. So, I'll make myself ready for it if I felt otherwise.
And I believe you have 1 amateur loss. How helpful
Yep.
is that kind of helping with your professional career and going undefeated?
Oh, that loss. I mean, I learned a lot from my wins, but that loss taught me a lot of things that I needed to do, and it carried me, still to this day throughout my career. So yeah, my loss. You learn more from losses than you do from wins. I take everything as a learning experience. Sure, it's unfortunate that was my first loss, and that was my only loss, but I made sure that was my only loss.
And you look at your opponent, Mo Miller. What do you make of him as an opponent? A lot of similarities between the two of you, both for LFA and Bantamweight division, and also you're both 5-0. What do you make of him as an opponent?
Yeah, I mean, I know I believe he's a collegiate wrestler. He's probably a good athlete. I believe I don't look too much into my opponents too much. I prepare as if I'm fighting, the champion of the world every fight camp. So I don't look too much into my opponents, but I know he's going to be a good athlete, and he's not going to have as much fighting experience as me. I've been fighting for a long time. I've been training for a long time, and I just know he's not prepared for what's coming to him with all the experience that I have over him.
And what do you think is required to get the UFC contract? Do you feel like a good performance, or do you feel like a finish is necessary? Because on the last week of Dana White's Contender Series, two of the flyweights both fought to a decision, a close decision, and they both got a contract. Do you think that's a possibility with both of you, or do you feel like a finish and a good performance is required?
I feel like if you just put on an exciting fight, that's good. If you please the audience, you please Dana White, everyone's entertained. I mean, I think that's the goal. I look for a finish. I'm very finish hungry, but my last fight, I didn't finish my fight, and that got fight of the night. It was very entertaining. Everyone, I've never had anyone tell me that I fought a boring fight before. So I'm naturally, as a fighter, I don't have to change anything about myself to get this contract. My style is entertaining, is exciting, and I go out there for the finish every time. So whatever the case may be, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to put on a good show for everyone, for Dana White, for everyone that's watching, and I'm going to finish this guy too. So that'll be the icing on the cake.
And do you feel like there's any kind of a huge amount of pressure on you because this kind of do or die? Obviously, if you did lose, you would get other possibilities to get into UFC. But what if this is your only opportunity to get into UFC? Is there a lot of pressure on this fight for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of pressure with every fight. The pressure that I put on myself is more than any other kind of external pressure that anyone could put out there for me. I hold myself to a higher standard than anyone could ever expect of me. So again, like I said before, I'm training like I'm fighting Peter Yan or Aljamain Sterling, the champions of the world. That's who I'm preparing to fight mentally, and every fight's like that for me. So I put a lot of pressure on myself. That could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing, but with that pressure, I overcome every time.
And what do you make of the UFC bantamweight division? You talked about Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan there. You look at the depth of the division outside of the rankings is full of prospects. How do you see yourself comparing to some of those? There's also tons of former LFA fighters as well. How do you see yourself comparing to those bantamweights?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready. And if we're going to talk about Contender Series stuff, Sean O'Malley has a lot of hype and all that kind of stuff, and he doesn't want to fight any ranked guys. So, I mean, I'll be glad to mess Sean O'Malley up. He's fragile. He's a skinny Slim Jim. He breaks his bones almost every time he fights. So, yeah, I'm very durable. Fun little statistic. I think my last 3 fights, I've broken my opponent's bones every fight. So, yeah, the insurance for the UFC, hopefully it's pretty good because, yeah, my next opponent, Sean O'Malley, whoever they match me up with after this guy, yeah, they're going to be hurting. So, yeah, I see myself standing well with those guys. Yeah, I don't have any issue. I'm well-rounded. I'm prepared for anything. So, for sure, I have a lot of progression to make as a martial artist and as a fighter, but, time's on my side, so I'm ready.
And are you looking to continue that statistic into this fight if it means, you win the fight is breaking bones and getting the win?
Yeah, I mean, I go out there with bad intentions. I'm going out there to hurt you, to fight. You know what I'm saying? I'm not, as much as I'm a martial artist at heart. When you got to go in there, you're a fighter. You got to go out there and hurt the guy. That's, we're fighting. It's something real. And that's what I'm gonna go. That's what I'm gonna go out there to do. Is I'm gonna hurt this guy. I'm gonna put on a good show, and I'm gonna tee off on him as long as his body can handle. So we'll see.
And what kind of fight are you predicting? What are you expecting going into there?
I don't know what I'm expecting, honestly. I mean, I'm gonna come at him. I'm gonna mess him up in the striking. If he doesn't like it, he's probably gonna shoot because he's a wrestler. And if if I stuff the takedown, I'm gonna make him pay for it. If he takes me down, I'm gonna make him pay for it too. So however the fight goes, he's getting messed up. I'm gonna I want to put everything on him. He's not going to expect what's coming. He's never fought anybody like me before.
And are you expecting a finish by yourself? And if so, what kind of round and how are you going to get that victory?
I've never been good with predicting how I finish. Sometimes I've tried this before, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna knock this guy out, and I'll hit the guy solid, and then they'll shoot, and I end up submitting the guy. Oh, I'm gonna submit this guy. Oh, I'm gonna take him down. I end up splitting him somehow or whatever. It's a fight. Anything could happen. I could throw overhand right, knock the guy out. He could throw overhand right, knock me out. Anything could happen in a fight. That's one thing I never put on myself. I never try to predict something or force anything. You know, the only thing that I force is my will to win, and I know I'm gonna go out there and fight and put it on them. So my only prediction is that I'm gonna win this fight and get the contract.
Well, you say the opposite happens of what you say. So realistically, do you want to predict the submission just so you get a knockout victory, or?
Yeah, there you go. I want to go ahead and predict a submission so I get a highlight reel knockout. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Who knows? You know. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time and all the best for your fight in almost a week's time now.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate the opportunity.